Hi, my name is Lorraine O'Neill, and this is video 2 of me narrating from my book, The Hilarious Dead Guy's Last Chance Undies. 7-year-old Polonia Appleseed's daddy has been killed, and she's hiding behind a couch as the perpetrators search for her. The two of them, Polonia was pretty sure it was two, were now in the dining room, directly behind the living room where she hid. What she didn't know was who they were. Uncle Armitage, yes, but who was the other one? The one who spoke in such a hushed tone she could barely discern it, though the cadence reminded her of someone who, in her fear, she could not place. "Oh, God, she's a kid!" Uncle Armitage blubbered in tragic supplication. More low words, plaintive but stern entreaty, and then a sobbing, hopeless whimper that sounded like defeated agreement. The couch's 1.5-inch push-out away from the walls made no difference along the wall that separated the living room from the dining room. But the other wall was shorter, as it opened to the entranceway of the house, and it was there that the gap turned Polonia's hidden cubbyhole into such a singularly good hide and virtually unseekable prize. Not only was the niche behind the couch and under the table so tiny adults didn't register it was there, the 1.5-inch gap between couch and wall allowed one 7-year-old Heidi to peer out. True, scrunched down tightly due to the low height of the table, Polonia would normally have only been able to see passing feet and shins, but there was something else that made the hiding place amongst the truly superlative. Okay, but we gotta find her first. Polonia, come out. It's me, Uncle Armitage, and..." There was a crash, like someone had tipped over a heavy piece of furniture. Polonia knew they were looking for her. Doors were opening, heavy objects were being shoved aside. She could hear the scraping. But all Polonia could think as she hugged her scab-knobby knees to her skinny chest was, "I want my daddy," Mommy having died when she was not even 2 months old. Polonia thought of scooting out from behind the couch, running to the den. Daddy was there. He would make Uncle Armitage and whoever he was with go away. But her fear was too great. She could not make herself push the couch shielding her away, could not make herself emerge. Instead, she watched. And what Polonia watched through the dark 1.5-inch gap was the direct bead she had to the full-length hallway mirror mounted in the entranceway that reflected everything going on in the living room she couldn't otherwise see back to her. And what she saw was Uncle Armitage tearing the place apart, hunting her. They were both there, though Uncle Armitage's body blocked the other one from her sight, and it wasn't like she could shift around and get an improved view. "She's got to be here. I checked the outside doors. They're both still locked, and we would have heard them if she'd opened them. She's here. She's hiding somewhere. We'll smoke her out." A low, murmured response that nevertheless sounded familiar. "No! What's that gonna do? I did not miss anything. I'm lighting it. All right, one more time." Polonia heard the two return to the far end of the house, then even more shouts, more pleading, but this time it was Uncle Armitage's voice that was quavering, beseeching, and near hysteria. There was another explosion and another thud, and Polonia couldn't help it. She was, after all, just a little girl. Tears coursed down her cheeks, and she started shaking. One of the searchers came back into the living room, stepping right by the couch she hid behind, but Polonia couldn't look. She'd closed her eyes tightly against the spiraling tension, waiting for the horror to pass. The footsteps moved off back to the den, and that's when she smelled it. It was the smell of the stuff Daddy had lit on fire before he'd poured it all over the baked Alaska dessert she'd been allowed to have with the grown-ups at the annual birthday party Daddy threw for himself, since no one else ever volunteered, before she'd been hustled off to bed. Daddy had turned off all the lights and poured a streaming blue fire over a giant mound of meringue that had glowed and flickered and sizzled as the meringue burned, charred brown streaks blossoming all over it. And Polonia knew that's what was going to happen to her. She was going to be covered in that same blue blanket of flame. That's when she smelled the smoke and stopped thinking of her father. No, Polonia Appleseed was now thinking of only one thing, baked Alaska. How she'd watched it burn, and how she'd be the baked Alaska if she didn't move. She dug deep, deeper than any child should have to dig, opened her eyes, and slowly pushed the couch outward. As if ripped from a nightmare, she silently reappeared, unfolding herself back up to her feet while hearing thumps coming from the den. Flitting softly as air, she tiptoed across the entranceway to the front door, her small fingers scrabbling at the locks that made noise. She heard the sounds in the den stop. Then footsteps pelting down the hall toward her as she flung the door open and bolted headlong out into the cold winter night. She heard more explosions behind her, but didn't stop, plummeting away into the forest in escape. If she had looked back, she would have recognized her relative hovering in the doorway of her about-to-burn home, gun in hand. But she didn't. That's the first chapter of my book, The Hilarious Dead Guy's Last Chance Undies. In video 3, on to chapter 2. Bye.